Okay, so I know this sounds completely out there, but I need to tell you something. What I experienced, it changed everything I thought I knew about our world, about history, about us, and it all started with a chance meeting. The air in the dusty tome always carried the scent of old paper and forgotten stories. It was my sanctuary, a small, independent bookstore tucked away on a cobblestone side street, far from the bustling main avenues of the city. Most nights, it was just me and old Mr. Henderson, the owner, lost in our respective literary worlds. But this particular Tuesday, the usual quiet hum of the fluorescent lights and the rustle of turning pages was punctuated by something different. It wasn't loud or jarring, but a subtle shift in the energy of the room, like a single, perfectly tuned note played amidst a cacophony. I was hunched over a first edition of The Golden Bough, a tome I'd been trying to acquire for years, when he entered. He wasn't overtly striking. In fact, his appearance was so understated it almost made him stand out. He wore a simple, unadorned robe, not unlike what you might see a monk wear, though the fabric seemed to shimmer faintly under the dim lighting, catching the dust motes in a way that suggested an otherworldly sheen. It was a deep, earthy brown, almost indistinguishable from the shadows that clung to the corners of the shop. His hair was sparse, a silvery halo around a head that seemed almost too perfectly proportioned. But it was his eyes that truly held me. They weren't just calm, they were ancient. They held the depth of untold millennia, a quiet, knowing gaze that seemed to pierce through the mundane and see something far beyond. He moved with a grace that was almost imperceptible, gliding rather than walking, making no sound as he drifted through the narrow aisles. He didn't browse like other customers. He didn't pull books from shelves or linger over titles. He simply walked, his gaze sweeping over the spines, not reading them, but seeming to absorb their essence. He stopped directly across from me, separated only by a towering shelf filled with obscure philosophy texts. He didn't speak immediately, just stood there, his ancient eyes fixed on me. There was no aggression, no judgment, only an intense, almost palpable curiosity. It wasn't a staring contest. It was an invitation. Finally, his voice, when it came, was soft, a low rumble that seemed to resonate from deep within him. It was perfectly accented, each word enunciated with a precision that felt both foreign and utterly natural. "You seem to be searching for answers," he said, his gaze unwavering, "just like many others who walk this path." My first instinct was to dismiss him, to offer some glib, self-deprecating remark about being lost in a book. But something in his eyes, something in the profound stillness of his presence, made me pause. "Aren't we all?" I managed, my voice a little more breathless than I would have liked. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips, a fleeting shadow that barely disturbed the serene landscape of his face. "Indeed, but not all seek with the same fervor, nor for the same truths." He gestured vaguely towards the book in my hands. "Your interests lie in the roots of human belief, the ancient narratives that shape our collective unconscious." I was taken aback. How could he know? I hadn't spoken a word about the book, or my fascination with mythology and ancient civilizations. "How did you—" He simply tilted his head, the movement fluid and unhurried. "Some things are written in the ether for those who know how to read, and some truths, once spoken, resonate with those who are prepared to hear them." He took a step closer, his presence expanding, filling the small space between us. The air around him seemed to thicken, almost as if the very atoms were paying attention. "You are prepared," he stated, not as a question, but as a pronouncement. And then he dropped the bombshell. His voice remained calm, almost conversational, but the words themselves were like thunderclaps in the quiet bookstore. "The Anunnaki are returning, and the time is closer than you think. 2026. He paused, letting the words hang in the air, allowing their impossible weight to settle. Then his gaze intensified, burning into mine. "And Egypt holds the key." My first thought was, is this guy crazy? My mind scrambled for a rational explanation. A performance artist? A cult member? A lonely old man with an overactive imagination? But then, there was this feeling, deep down, a visceral tremor that echoed through my very being, that he wasn't. That he knew something. His conviction wasn't theatrical, it was absolute. The ancient wisdom in his eyes, the unsettling calm in his voice, the way he seemed to perceive more than any ordinary human, it all coalesced into a profound sense of unease, and an even more profound sense of undeniable intrigue. I must have looked utterly bewildered, because he offered another faint, knowing smile. Disbelief is the natural first step, but the truth, once glimpsed, demands further investigation. He reached into the folds of his robe and produced a small, intricately carved amulet, pressing it gently into my palm. It was cool to the touch, made of a dark, obsidian-like stone, etched with symbols I vaguely recognized from ancient Sumerian texts, yet distorted, subtly different. "Seek me out, if you dare to know more. The path is open to those who are willing to walk it." And with that, he turned, his silent, graceful exit as unnerving as his entrance. He simply melted back into the shadows, leaving me standing there, clutching the strange amulet, the scent of old paper now mixed with a faint metallic tang I couldn't place. I stood there for a long time, the words Anunnaki, 2026, and Egypt echoing in my mind, each one a hammer blow against the comfortable walls of my reality. My initial skepticism was still there, a stubborn ember, but it was now dwarfed by a raging fire of curiosity, a desperate need to understand. This wasn't just some random encounter. It felt like a pivotal moment, a doorway flung open to a world I never knew existed. You need to hear the rest of this story, because it's not just about me, it's about all of us. Before that night, I was just me, working my job, watching documentaries, reading conspiracy theories online like everyone else. My days were a predictable cycle of spreadsheets and the occasional deep dive into some historical rabbit hole. I was, by most standards, a perfectly ordinary individual, perhaps a bit more inclined to intellectual wanderings than some, but certainly not someone who expected to stumble into a conversation about ancient alien gods returning in the near future. My fascination with the unknown had always been a solitary pursuit, a quiet hobby, rather than a life-altering quest. I'd always been interested in ancient Egypt, the pyramids, things like that, but mostly just as cool history, marveling at the ingenuity of a civilization long past, never truly believing there was some deeper, hidden current connecting it to the present. I read books, watched documentaries, even dabbled in amateur archaeology forums, always with a healthy dose of skepticism, a firm belief that while history might be mysterious, it was ultimately explainable through human endeavor. The priest's words, however, had ignited something different. The amulet, cool and heavy in my hand, was a constant reminder. I sought him out the very next evening, drawn by an irresistible pull that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. I found him in the same bookstore, sitting in a worn armchair, seemingly lost in thought. He looked up as I approached, his ancient eyes acknowledging my arrival without surprise, as if he had been expecting me. He spoke about an ancient brotherhood, a silent watch, spanning millennia. He called himself a keeper of the old ways, a lineage tracing back to before recorded history, dedicated to preserving truths that modern society had long forgotten or actively suppressed. He wasn't a priest in the conventional sense, he explained, but a custodian of knowledge, a bridge between epochs. His order, he said, understood the cyclical nature of time, the grand cosmic alignments and humanity's place within them. He spoke of the Anunnaki not as mythical figures, but as architects, engineers of early human civilization. He explained how they were seen as gods, how they shaped early human civilization, and why they supposedly left our planet. According to him, the Anunnaki were an advanced extraterrestrial race who arrived on Earth in antiquity, primarily due to their planet, Nibiru, facing atmospheric degradation. They needed gold, he asserted, not for its monetary value, but for its unique properties to repair their atmosphere. He detailed how they genetically engineered early hominids through a process he described as accelerated evolution to create a subservient workforce, us. Homo sapiens, he claimed, was not merely a product of natural selection, but a deliberate creation, imbued with a spark of Anunnaki DNA. They built magnificent cities, taught us agriculture, writing, astronomy, and established the foundational myths and religions that still resonate today. But then, for reasons he only hinted at, a cataclysm, a shift in their own priorities, or perhaps a growing disillusionment with their creation. They departed, leaving behind a nascent civilization and a promise to return. The 2026 prophecy, he elaborated, wasn't just a random date. There was a convergence, a cosmic window that only opens every so often, a specific alignment of celestial bodies that resonated with the Anunnaki's home system. He described it as a preordained time, woven into the very fabric of the cosmos, a moment when the veil between our dimension and theirs would thin, allowing for their re-entry. It was a cosmic alarm clock, set millennia ago, now finally approaching its chime. This wasn't about invasion, he clarified, but about a re-engagement, a re-evaluation of their ancient project. Humanity had reached a critical juncture, he posited, and the Anunnaki's return was either a guiding hand or a final judgment, depending on our collective trajectory. And Egypt, he said, was not just key, but the master key. He explained that the answer wasn't just in Egypt, but that Egypt itself was a kind of cosmic key, a placeholder for something far older. The pyramids, the temples, the hieroglyphs. They weren't merely tombs and carvings. They were intricate schematics, energy conduits, and data repositories left behind by the Anunnaki to facilitate their return. The Great Pyramid, in particular, he claimed, was not a tomb for a pharaoh, but a colossal machine, encoding astronomical data, mathematical constants, and a precise timeline for their reemergence. The Sphinx, he whispered, guarded not a treasure, but a forgotten entrance, a portal, perhaps, to realms beyond our current understanding. The very land of Egypt, saturated with their ancient presence, held the energetic resonance required to bridge the dimensional gap. It was a giant, terrestrial motherboard, waiting for the right sequence of cosmic events to activate its dormant programs. He didn't just tell me stories, he showed me images, symbols I'd never seen, things that made my skin crawl with an unsettling familiarity. He produced ancient scrolls, not of paper, but of a metallic, flexible material, covered in glowing script that seemed to shift and dance as I looked at it. He spoke of ley lines, of planetary grids, of forgotten languages that held the power to manipulate reality. My initial skepticism, though persistent, began to erode under the sheer weight of his conviction and the strange, compelling nature of his evidence. It was like a dam slowly cracking, the pressure of a hidden reality pushing against the familiar world I knew. I found myself listening, truly listening, questioning everything I thought I knew about history, about humanity, about our place in the universe. The pieces, however outlandish, began to connect, forming a mosaic that, while terrifying, held an undeniable, profound logic. Then he looked me dead in the eye, his gaze piercing, solemn. Once you know this, you can't unknow it. And there are those who don't want this truth to get out. His voice dropped to a near whisper, yet it resonated with an authority that left no room for doubt. There are forces, ancient and modern, that seek to control this knowledge, to manipulate the coming events for their own ends. They will not hesitate to silence anyone who stands in their way. You have been chosen, or perhaps you have chosen yourself, to bear this burden. Be warned. The path ahead is fraught with peril, but the truth, once glimpsed, is a powerful, irresistible current. He spoke of secret societies, of clandestine organizations embedded within governments and corporations, all vying for control over the narrative, over the very future of humanity. He implied that my encounter with him was not accidental, but a calculated risk, a desperate attempt to disseminate critical information before it was too late. The weight of his words settled upon me, a chilling premonition of the dangers that lay ahead, yet also a strange sense of purpose. Our meetings became a regular thing. He wasn't just a stranger anymore. He was a teacher, in a way, a guide through a labyrinth of forgotten histories and cosmic possibilities. Each encounter peeled back another layer of the mundane world, revealing a vibrant, complex reality humming beneath the surface. He taught me to look at the world differently, to see patterns I'd always missed, to feel energy. It wasn't about memorizing facts, but about shifting my perception, opening my mind to concepts that defied conventional logic. He encouraged me to observe, to question, to feel the subtle vibrations of the universe that most people simply tune out. He introduced me to meditation, not as a spiritual exercise in the traditional sense, but as a tool for mental discipline and heightened awareness. He called it tuning the inner antenna. He instructed me to visualize energy flows, to connect with the Earth's magnetic field, to listen to the silence between thoughts. At first it felt like a futile exercise, my mind a chaotic storm of daily anxieties. But gradually, patiently, under his guidance, I began to experience fleeting moments of profound calm, of expanded perception. I started to notice subtle shifts in the atmosphere, to feel the presence of others before I saw them, to perceive the interconnectedness of seemingly disparate events. It was as if a new sense was awakening within me, a subtle hum of cosmic data that had always been there, just beyond my grasp. He also directed me to ancient texts, not the ones found in university libraries, but obscure manuscripts, digital archives of forgotten languages, and even oral traditions passed down through generations. He showed me fragments of what he called the tablets of Thoth, not the ones you read about in popular culture, but something far more ancient, hidden. These weren't physical tablets, he explained, but energetic imprints, accessible through specific states of consciousness. He taught me to decipher symbology, to understand that ancient glyphs were not just pictures, but vibrational frequencies, carriers of complex information. He introduced me to the concept of sacred geometry, explaining how it was not merely an aesthetic choice, but a universal language, a blueprint for creation itself, encoding information about the cosmos and our place within it. He explained that the return might not be a physical spaceship landing, but a shift in our very perception of reality, or even a jump to a parallel timeline. He spoke of timelines and parallel realities not as theoretical constructs, but as tangible dimensions, overlapping and interweaving. The Anunnaki, he posited, operated on a different vibrational frequency, a higher dimension, and their return wasn't necessarily an invasion from outer space, but a resynchronization of their timeline with ours. He suggested that our reality was just one of many, a specific frequency within a vast cosmic symphony, and that the Anunnaki's reemergence would involve a shift in that frequency, a merging or aligning of different vibrational planes. This added a layer of complexity, transforming the narrative from a simple alien encounter to a profound exploration of quantum reality and consciousness. He hinted that the return could manifest as a collective awakening, a sudden expansion of human consciousness, or even a reactivation of dormant DNA sequences within us. He spoke about our collective consciousness, about how our choices now would determine the kind of future we'd step into. He imparted spiritual lessons that transcended any specific religion, focusing instead on universal principles of interconnectedness, responsibility, and the power of intention. Humanity, he explained, was at a crossroads. The Anunnaki's return was not a predetermined fate, but a catalyst, a moment of profound choice. Our collective vibrational frequency, our dominant thoughts and emotions, would largely dictate the nature of their re-engagement. If we continued down a path of division, fear, and destruction, their return could be catastrophic. If, however, we embraced unity, compassion, and wisdom, it could usher in an unprecedented era of evolution and enlightenment. He stressed the importance of individual awakening, of each person taking responsibility for their own consciousness, as a ripple effect that would ultimately shape the collective destiny. He warned against complacency, against blindly accepting dogma, urging me to cultivate discernment and inner strength. After our conversations, I started seeing things, not just shadows, but patterns in the news, in the sky, even in my dreams. It was like the world was whispering secrets, and I was finally learning to listen. I noticed an increase in unusual celestial phenomena, strange lights in the night sky that defied explanation, bizarre cloud formations that seemed almost intelligently designed. Synchronicity became a daily occurrence. I would think of a specific symbol, and it would appear later that day in an unexpected place. My dreams grew vivid, filled with ancient landscapes, geometric patterns, and encounters with beings of light. What once would have been dismissed as coincidence or overactive imagination now felt like undeniable confirmation. A subtle but persistent communication from a reality far grander than I had ever conceived. The world around me, once so predictable, was now alive with hidden messages, a cosmic tapestry revealing itself thread by thread. This wasn't just a story anymore. It felt like a ticking clock, and I was holding the only key. The weight of this secret, of this impending cosmic event, began to affect my daily life. My job, my social interactions, everything felt trivial in comparison to the immense knowledge I was accumulating. Sleep became elusive, haunted by vivid dreams and the constant hum of newfound awareness. Food lost its taste. Mundane conversations felt hollow. I felt a growing sense of urgency, a responsibility to understand, to prepare, not just for myself, but for something far greater. The initial thrill of discovery was slowly being replaced by a profound sense of pressure, a gnawing anxiety that time was running out and that humanity was largely oblivious to the monumental shift on the horizon. The priest's warnings about those who sought to suppress the truth echoed in my mind, adding another layer of apprehension. I knew, with a terrifying certainty, that my life had irrevocably changed, and that I was now inextricably linked to a destiny far beyond my control. One evening, as the last rays of sunset painted the bookstore in hues of orange and purple, the priest's demeanor shifted. He had been unusually quiet, his ancient eyes distant, as if peering into another dimension. He reached into the deep pocket of his shimmering robe and produced a small, heavy amulet, unlike anything I'd ever seen. It was crafted from a dark, iridescent metal, cold to the touch, and inscribed with a single, complex symbol that seemed to pulse with a faint internal light. It was not the same amulet he had given me on our first encounter. This one felt older, more powerful, radiating a subtle energy that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. He placed it carefully in my hand, his gaze intensely focused, his usual calm replaced by a rare, profound urgency. "You must go to Egypt," he said, his voice a low, resonant command, leaving no room for argument or doubt. "And you must find the Eye of Osiris. It is there that the final sequence must be initiated. The time for observation is over. The time for action has begun." Leaving everything behind was hard, but I couldn't not go. Every fiber of my being was screaming that this was real, that the priest's words, however fantastical, held a truth I could no longer ignore. The decision to abandon my mundane life, my job, my familiar surroundings, felt less like a choice and more like an unavoidable gravitational pull. The amulet, now nestled securely against my skin, seemed to hum with a low, insistent energy, a constant reminder of the mission. Securing a flight to Cairo was surprisingly easy, almost too easy, as if the path was already being cleared for me. The journey was a blur of nervous anticipation and restless sleep, my mind racing with fragmented images of ancient temples, cryptic symbols, and the priest's solemn warning. Landing in Cairo, the air itself felt different, charged, heavy with history, and an almost palpable sense of ancient power. The chaotic symphony of the city, the unfamiliar smells, the vibrant colors, it all washed over me, a sensory overload that both disoriented and exhilarated. I was truly here, on the threshold of something immense. I tried to follow the priest's cryptic clues, asking around, looking for specific symbols he had shown me in the ancient texts. My initial investigations were met with blank stares, polite dismissals, or outright suspicion. I sought out local archaeologists, historians, even street vendors who operated near ancient sites, attempting to subtly weave fragments of the priest's teachings into conversation. But it was like hitting a wall. People either looked at me strangely, as if I were a madman, or pretended not to understand my inquiries, their eyes betraying a knowledge they were unwilling to share. The phrase "Eye of Osiris" drew particular caution, often met with a quick change of subject or a nervous glance over the shoulder. It quickly became clear that this was not a quest for public knowledge, but a hidden path, guarded by layers of secrecy and perhaps fear. My initial optimism began to wane, replaced by a growing sense of frustration and isolation. The vastness of Cairo, with its millions of stories and secrets, suddenly felt overwhelming. Then I started to feel watched. Little things at first, a car that seemed to be parked in the same spot near my hotel for days, the same face appearing in different crowds, faint clicks on my phone calls, people asking about me in places I'd just been. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, designed to make me question my own perceptions. But the priest's warnings echoed in my ears, reminding me that there were forces who didn't want this truth to get out. The shadowy opposition he had spoken of, the secret societies and clandestine organizations, were not mere theory. They were real, and they were aware of my presence. The feeling of being constantly observed was unnerving, turning every casual glance into a potential threat, every passerby into a possible agent. I found myself adopting a more cautious demeanor, checking my surroundings, trying to blend in, to become less noticeable. One night, I was walking through the bustling Khan el-Khalili Bazaar, the vibrant heart of old Cairo, lost in thought, when someone tried to snatch my bag. It wasn't a clumsy attempt by a petty thief. It was swift, calculated, and surprisingly aggressive. I clung to it instinctively, my hand instinctively going for the heavy amulet hidden beneath my shirt. The attacker, cloaked and moving with a speed that felt unnatural, cursed in a language I didn't understand, and quickly melted back into the throngs of people. It felt more aggressive, more targeted than a simple robbery. They weren't after my money. They were after something specific, something they knew I carried. The encounter left me shaken, my heart pounding, a cold dread seeping into my bones. This wasn't just about ancient prophecies anymore. It was about survival. I tried calling him, texting him, but nothing. It was like he'd vanished into thin air. His phone went straight to voicemail. His email address bounced back. I even returned to the bookstore where we'd met, but it was locked, dark, and seemingly abandoned. The owner next door claimed he hadn't seen the old man in weeks. The sudden silence from the priest was deafening, amplifying my sense of isolation and vulnerability. I was completely on my own, thrust into a foreign land with a monumental task, and my only guide had disappeared without a trace. The doubt, which I had so carefully suppressed, began to creep in, insidious and chilling. Was I crazy? Had I fallen for some elaborate hoax? A sophisticated delusion spun by a charismatic old man? The sheer impossibility of the situation, coupled with the growing danger, started to wear down my resolve. My mind replayed every conversation, every shred of evidence, searching for a flaw, a trick, a reason to dismiss it all as an elaborate fantasy. Doubt started creeping in, like cold fingers down my spine, questioning not just the priest's motives, but my own sanity. The weight of responsibility, once a driving force, now felt like an unbearable burden. I found myself sitting alone in my hotel room, staring at the dimly lit streets of Cairo, wondering if I had made the biggest mistake of my life. The amulet, once a source of comfort, now felt like a lead weight, dragging me deeper into an unfathomable abyss. Just as I was about to give up, sitting in a dusty cafe, nursing a bitter cup of coffee, an old woman approached my table. Her face was a map of wrinkles, her eyes ancient and knowing, reminiscent of the priest's. She didn't say a word, just slid a worn piece of parchment across to me. It was old, brittle, and smelled faintly of incense and desert dust. My hand trembled as I picked it up. On it was a symbol, one the priest had shown me, a complex intertwining of lines and circles that I recognized from the tablets of Thoth he had described. But beneath it, there was something new, a series of faint, almost invisible markings, like a constellation that I hadn't seen before. It was a glimmer of hope, a lifeline thrown just as I was about to drown in despair. Her presence, her silent gesture, felt like a divine intervention. She nodded almost imperceptibly, a faint, knowing smile playing on her lips, and then, as silently as she had arrived, she blended back into the bustling crowd, leaving me alone once more, but no longer without direction. The parchment led me to a map, an ancient one, carefully etched onto what felt like dried animal skin, hidden within the lining of the old woman's gift. The faint markings on the parchment, when overlaid on the ancient map, coalesced into a series of coordinates pointing to a specific remote location. And on that map, marked in faded red ink, was a place no tourist ever goes. A place that felt forbidden. It was deep in the western desert, far from any established roads or modern settlements, an area rumored to be haunted by jinn and ancient spirits. The coordinates didn't point to a known temple or a famous tomb, but to an unnamed, desolate expanse of sand and rock, a place utterly devoid of any contemporary markers. It was a journey into the unknown, a path whispered only in legends, a place where the veil between worlds felt incredibly thin. The journey was arduous, stretching over days under the relentless Egyptian sun. My new companion, the old woman, whose name I learned was Aliyah, proved to be an invaluable guide. She moved with a silent grace, her knowledge of the desert as profound as her understanding of ancient lore. We navigated through treacherous terrain, avoiding the occasional military patrols, with her uncanny foresight until we finally reached it. A small, almost invisible entrance, hidden in the side of a towering cliff face, camouflaged by millennia of wind-blown sand and cleverly disguised rock formations. It was not a grand portal, but a humble fissure in the earth, barely wide enough for one person to squeeze through, yet radiating an undeniable sense of profound secrecy. Inside, it wasn't just stone and dust. As we ventured deeper into the cool, dark passage, the air grew thick with an almost palpable energy. My fingers, tracing the smooth, polished walls, felt vibrations, a low hum that seemed to resonate deep within my bones. After what felt like an eternity of winding tunnels, the passage opened into a vast, cavernous chamber. It was breathtaking, a spectacle of ancient engineering and alien design. There were glowing panels embedded in the walls, not with light bulbs, but with an internal luminescence that pulsed rhythmically, casting an ethereal glow on intricate symbols that shifted and rearranged themselves before my very eyes. Strange devices, unlike any technology I had ever witnessed, stood silently, their surfaces a seamless blend of unknown metals and crystalline structures. The air crackled with static electricity, and a faint sweet smell, like ozone and forgotten spices, filled my nostrils. This wasn't human craftsmanship. This was something else entirely, something ancient and vastly superior. It wasn't a physical key like you'd imagine, not a relic to be held or turned. It was a chamber, a kind of cosmic switchboard, powered by something ancient and immense. In the center of the chamber stood a colossal console, crafted from the same luminous material as the wall panels. Its surface was covered in a dizzying array of geometric patterns, symbols, and what appeared to be holographic projections of celestial maps and intricate energy pathways. Aliyah gestured towards it, her eyes alight with reverence. This, she explained in a hushed whisper, was the true Eye of Osiris. Not a literal eye, but the focal point of a vast interconnected network, a nexus of cosmic energy, designed to interface with consciousness itself. It was the mechanism by which the Anunnaki had once interacted with our world, and through which their return would be facilitated. It was a device that didn't just store information, but actively transmitted and received it across dimensions. Suddenly, a holographic projection shimmered into existence above the central console, coalescing from the pulsating light. It was him, the priest. His form was translucent, flickering slightly, but his presence was undeniable. His calm gaze, even more intense than I remembered. His voice, calm as ever, filled the chamber, echoing with a resonance that felt both ancient and intimately familiar. He confirmed the discoveries, his spectral hand gesturing towards the glowing mechanisms around us. "You have found it," he began, his voice devoid of surprise. "The heart of the lion, the eye of Osiris. This chamber is the conduit, the bridge between our dimension and theirs." He explained what I had to do next, his words precise, each instruction laden with profound significance. The Anunnaki's full return, he stated, depended on the delicate activation of this ancient technology, a process that required not just technical precision, but a specific alignment of consciousness. He explained that their return wasn't about invasion, but about integration, a recalibration of our shared reality, a choice. The priest's holographic image intensified, his voice gaining urgency. He clarified that the Anunnaki would not arrive in spaceships to conquer or colonize. Instead, their return would manifest as a profound shift in our collective consciousness, a reawakening of dormant genetic information within humanity, a merging of vibrational frequencies. They were not coming to Earth, but into Earth, or rather into our understanding of it. It would be a process of integration, a realignment of our species with its true cosmic heritage. He spoke of a grand choice humanity would face: to embrace this integration, to welcome the expansion of consciousness and the reestablishment of our connection to the greater galactic community, or to resist it, to cling to old paradigms of fear and separation. He stressed that 2026 wasn't just a date for them to arrive, but for us to decide if we were ready, if we wanted to step into a new future. The priest emphasized that humanity was not a passive recipient in this cosmic event. Our collective state of being, our readiness to evolve, would determine the nature of the integration. The Eye of Osiris was not merely a switch for the Anunnaki. It was a tuning fork for humanity. Our choices now, the thoughts we harbored, the actions we took, would resonate through this conduit, influencing the outcome. He spoke of individual responsibility, of the necessity for inner work, for shedding old fears and embracing a higher consciousness. It was a test, he implied, a moment of profound evolutionary choice for our entire species. The Anunnaki were merely the catalyst, the mirror, reflecting our true potential and our collective decision. Just as the message ended, a deafening klaxon blared, shaking the very foundations of the ancient chamber. Red warning lights flared, casting grotesque shadows across the glowing panels. The entrance to the chamber, previously so well hidden, was breached with a thunderous explosion. The air filled with dust and the acrid smell of burnt explosives. Heavy metallic footsteps echoed through the tunnel. They had found us. A squad of heavily armed figures, clad in sleek, dark tactical gear, burst into the chamber, their weapons raised, laser sights dancing across the ancient technology in our faces. Their faces were obscured by visors, but their intent was brutally clear. The shadowy opposition, the forces the priest had warned me about, were here. They had tracked us, and they were intent on stopping whatever process we were about to initiate. I stood before the glowing console, the fate of our world, maybe even our reality, resting on my next move. The air was thick with tension, the metallic scent of fear mingling with the ancient ozone. The armed figures advanced, their weapons trained on Aliyah and me. The priest's holographic projection flickered and began to fade, his last words echoing in my mind. "The choice is yours, humanity's champion." The choices were clear, but the consequences, I couldn't even begin to grasp them. Activating the console now amidst this chaos could either usher in a new era or trigger an unforeseen catastrophe. My hand hovered over a sequence of glowing symbols, each pulsing with a silent invitation, a momentous decision hanging in the balance. With a deep breath, I pressed the sequence of symbols. My fingers, guided by an instinct that transcended conscious thought, danced across the illuminated console, activating patterns and sequences the priest had subtly imprinted upon my mind. The chamber pulsed with an incredible energy, a soundless scream that reverberated through my very bones, a wave of pure force that seemed to push against the very fabric of reality. The ancient technology, dormant for millennia, roared to life, not with mechanical gears or whirring fans, but with an internal, organic hum, a symphony of light and vibration. The air crackled, not with mere static, but with the raw power of creation itself. A feeling akin to standing at the birth of a star, the agents stormed in, weapons drawn, their menacing silhouettes momentarily frozen against the blinding light emanating from the console. But they weren't prepared for the energy, for the ancient power that now filled the space. A force that was physical yet ethereal, tangible yet incomprehensible to their modern instruments. Their high-tech gear, designed for suppression and control, flickered and died. The laser sights on their weapons vanished, their communication earpieces went silent, and the very air around them seemed to thicken, making movement difficult, their bodies suddenly heavy, disoriented. They stumbled, their shouts of command replaced by grunts of confusion and pain. My ally, Aliyah, stepped forward, her eyes glowing with an inner light that rivaled the console's brilliance. Her frail, ancient form seemed to expand, radiating an aura of calm authority that instantly quelled the agent's aggression. She raised her hands, not in a combative gesture, but in one of profound spiritual command. The agents were thrown back, not by physical force, but by something else, something unseen, a wave of resonant energy that peeled back their layers of fear and aggression, leaving them stunned and vulnerable. They fell to the ground, not unconscious, but overwhelmed, their minds reeling from an experience they couldn't process, their belief systems shattered by the undeniable presence of something far beyond their understanding. One of the agents, dazed, his visor cracked, mumbled something about containment, about preventing destabilization. He spoke of an asset, of global security protocols. Their faces, now visible, were not malicious, but terrified. They weren't just trying to stop me. They were trying to control what was coming, to manage an event they perceived as an existential threat. They believed they were protecting humanity, but their methods were born of fear and ignorance, their understanding limited by a rigid, materialistic worldview. They saw the Anunnaki's return as an invasion, a destabilizing force that needed to be either suppressed or exploited for their own gain, never as an opportunity for evolution. Their equipment went dark, their communication channels jammed. The ancient energy in the chamber had completely neutralized their modern tech, rendering their sophisticated weaponry and surveillance useless. They were helpless, reduced to mere men in expensive, now useless suits. Their carefully constructed world of control and information superiority had been utterly dismantled by a force they couldn't even register on their sensors. It was a technological defeat, but more profoundly, a defeat of their paradigm. They lay there, disarmed and disoriented, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and dawning comprehension. Aliyah simply looked at them, her gaze holding both compassion and an ancient wisdom, before turning back to me, urging me to complete the activation. As we left the chamber, leaving the bewildered agents to grapple with their shattered reality, the night sky seemed brighter, shimmering with an unusual intensity. The stars, usually a distant twinkle, now pulsed with a vibrant, almost sentient light. And later, as we made our way back toward civilization, news reports started filtering in, not of alien invasions or global catastrophes, but of subtle yet profound shifts. Unexplained energy spikes were detected across various geological fault lines, causing no damage but registering as unprecedented bursts of unknown origin. Strange astronomical alignments, previously dismissed as mere coincidences, were suddenly being re-evaluated by stunned scientists. Even a sudden, unprecedented shift in global awareness about ancient history began to manifest, with archaeological discoveries being made at an accelerated rate, revealing artifacts that challenged established timelines. It was as if the world's collective consciousness had been subtly nudged, awakened to latent truths. I wasn't the same person who'd boarded that plane. The naive fascination with ancient mysteries had been replaced by a deep, visceral understanding. I had seen behind the curtain, peered into the very gears of reality, and there was no going back. The mundane concerns of my former life now seemed utterly trivial, faded memories from a distant past. My perception of time, of space, of human history itself, had been irrevocably altered. I carried the echo of the chamber's power, the priest's wisdom, and Aliyah's quiet strength within me. Every cell of my being resonated with a new frequency, a heightened awareness of the interconnectedness of all things. I was no longer an observer, but a participant, a living conduit in a grand cosmic drama. The priest's words echoed in my mind. This is not the end, but the true beginning. And I knew, with chilling certainty, he was right. The activation of the Eye of Osiris had been but a single step in a much larger process. The subtle manifestations, the global shifts in awareness, were merely the first ripples of a profound transformation. The Anunnaki's influence was no longer a theoretical concept, but a palpable force, weaving itself into the tapestry of our reality. The question that now burned in my mind, a relentless fire, was, what happens now? What form would this integration truly take? And what role was left for humanity to play in this unfolding cosmic drama? The future, once a distant horizon, now felt like a vast, uncharted ocean, and we were sailing into it, blind. The world felt different, sharper, in the days and weeks following the activation of the Eye of Osiris. It was as if a veil had been lifted, not just from my eyes, but from the collective consciousness of humanity, revealing the underlying currents of reality, the hidden machinery of existence that had always been there, just beyond our perception. The subtle shifts I had witnessed immediately after leaving the chamber began to amplify, weaving themselves into the fabric of everyday life, manifesting in ways both profound and unsettling. It wasn't a sudden, cataclysmic event, but a gradual, almost imperceptible unfolding, like a flower blooming in slow motion, each petal revealing a new facet of truth. The Anunnaki weren't coming back in the way we imagined ships and aliens descending from the sky. That was the profound, shocking truth that had begun to solidify in my mind. A revelation that recontextualized everything the priest had told me. They were always here, intertwined with our very essence, waiting to be reawakened. Their return was not an external arrival, but an internal resurgence. It was a reactivation of dormant genetic codes within humanity, a realignment of our spiritual frequencies with theirs, a collective remembrance of our shared cosmic heritage. The Anunnaki, as the priest explained in subsequent, fleeting mental transmissions that now occurred with increasing frequency, were not merely an ancient extraterrestrial race. They were the architects of our consciousness, the progenitors of our spiritual DNA, the cosmic spark that ignited human potential. Their return was the universe's way of prompting humanity to remember its true self, to reclaim its inherent divinity. He wasn't just a priest, he was a bridge. A guardian of the old ways, yes, but also a living conduit to the Anunnaki consciousness itself. The ancient woman, Ilea, now revealed herself as the physical manifestation of a lineage, a chosen guardian whose purpose was to facilitate this very awakening. The priest, as I had known him, was not a singular entity, but a collective consciousness that manifested through various chosen individuals across different timelines and dimensions. He was an archetype, a cosmic messenger whose physical form was merely a temporary vessel. His purpose was to guide, to teach, to prepare those sensitive enough to receive the truth, ensuring the smooth transition of humanity into its next evolutionary phase. His disappearance and reappearance were not magical tricks, but shifts in his energetic manifestation, his ability to interface with our physical reality. He was, in essence, a living library of Anunnaki memory, a direct link to the source. 2026 wasn't just a deadline. It was an awakening, a chance for humanity to remember its true origins, its true potential, and choose its path forward, with or without the full integration of the Anunnaki consciousness. The year marked a specific cosmic alignment, a convergence of energies that opened a window, a portal, allowing for this profound reintegration. It was a moment of choice, a critical juncture in humanity's evolutionary journey. We could embrace this expanded consciousness, willingly step into our role as galactic citizens, or we could resist, clinging to the familiar comfort of our limited perceptions, and face the consequences of a forced, potentially chaotic integration. The priest's transmissions emphasized that the Anunnaki were not imposing their will, but rather offering an opportunity, a catalyst for humanity's self-realization. The outcome was entirely dependent on our collective free will. Egypt wasn't just a location. It was the planetary hard drive, storing the ancient data, the blueprints of our shared galactic history, waiting for the right moment to upload. The pyramids, the temples, the Sphinx. They were not mere monuments, but colossal energetic antennae, designed to receive and transmit cosmic information. The Eye of Osiris, the chamber we had activated, was the central processing unit, the master switch that initiated the data transfer, the recalibration of Earth's energetic grid. It was a repository of galactic memory, a physical manifestation of the Anunnaki's original design for humanity and this planet. Activating it had begun the process of uploading this ancient knowledge directly into the collective human subconscious, subtly influencing our thoughts, our creativity, our intuition, prompting us to remember what we had forgotten. I started seeing glimpses, flashes of other lives, other versions of Earth, other realities unfurling simultaneously. It was like the fabric of reality itself was thinning, showing me the infinite possibilities, the myriad timelines branching off from our own. These weren't mere visions. They were experiences, brief but vivid immersions into parallel dimensions where humanity had made different choices, where the Anunnaki integration had taken different forms. In some, a golden age of enlightenment flourished. In others, chaos reigned supreme. It was a powerful, often overwhelming, reminder that our current reality was but one thread in an infinitely complex tapestry, and that our choices held immense weight, resonating across the multiverse. The priest's presence, now a constant companion in my mind, helped me navigate these disorienting glimpses, explaining that the Anunnaki's influence was not confined to a single timeline, but was a multi-dimensional phenomenon, affecting all possible versions of humanity. The Anunnaki weren't here to conquer or save. They were here to present us with a mirror, to show us who we truly are, and to ask, what will you do with this knowledge? This was the profound choice that lay before humanity. Will we embrace our galactic heritage, transcend our petty divisions, and unite as a species ready to take its place among the stars? Or will we succumb to fear, to the old patterns of control and separation, and reject this monumental opportunity for evolution? The integration was not a passive event. It demanded active participation, a conscious decision from each individual. The subtle shifts in global consciousness were merely the invitation. The response was up to us. The priest's final, lingering message was one of profound responsibility, a call to humanity to awaken to its own power, its own potential, and to consciously choose its destiny. But even with all this, I still wondered, what happens if we choose wrong? What happens if we're not ready? The sheer magnitude of the choice, the potential consequences of collective fear or ignorance, weighed heavily on my soul. The integration was underway, the ancient energies flowing, the genetic codes stirring. But the human element, our unpredictable capacity for both light and shadow, remained the ultimate variable. The priest had offered guidance. Aaliyah had provided the means. But the final act, the ultimate choice, belonged to humanity itself. And as the world continued its subtle, inexorable shift, I knew that the answers to those lingering questions would only be revealed in the unfolding tapestry of our collective future. My life is different now. I can't unsee what I've seen, can't unknow what I've learned. My purpose is clear, etched into the very fiber of my being by the profound experiences I've endured. The mundane existence I once knew feels like a distant dream, a faded photograph from another lifetime. The person who boarded that plane to Egypt, filled with a mix of skepticism and desperate hope, is gone. In their place stands someone fundamentally altered, a vessel now attuned to frequencies beyond the ordinary, burdened and blessed with a truth too vast to contain. My days are no longer dictated by the trivialities of daily life, but by an urgent, almost spiritual, imperative to share what I know, to prepare others for the monumental shift that is already underway. Look around you. The rapid advancements in AI, once a slow crawl, now accelerate at an exponential pace, hinting at intelligences that seem to emerge fully formed, almost as if channeled from an unseen source. The sudden, widespread interest in ancient sites, not just among archaeologists, but among the general public, is unprecedented. Documentaries, podcasts, and online communities are dissecting every pyramid, every forgotten ruin, searching for answers that mainstream history can no longer provide. There's a growing sense of unease, yes, but also a palpable awakening across the globe. People are questioning narratives, seeking deeper meaning, feeling an inexplicable pull towards something greater than themselves. It's all connected. These seemingly disparate phenomena are threads in a grand tapestry, woven by the subtle yet powerful influence of the Anunnaki's reintegration. The energy surges, the unexplained astronomical events, the collective shift in consciousness. They are not isolated incidents, but symptoms of a planetary awakening, a cosmic alarm clock ringing for humanity. Don't just take my word for it. Start looking, start questioning, turn off the noise, silence the distractions, and truly observe the world around you. Read between the lines of the news, listen to the whispers of your intuition, feel the subtle shifts in the energetic landscape. The truth isn't hidden. It's simply veiled by our own preconceived notions and collective inertia. Because 2026 isn't far off, and you need to be ready. The timeline for full integration is approaching rapidly, and with it comes a profound choice, a crossroads for our species. To deny it, to remain oblivious, is to forfeit your role in shaping the future, to become a passive observer rather than an active participant in humanity's greatest evolution. This isn't just about some ancient aliens, some distant, powerful beings dictating our fate. It's about us, our consciousness, our choices, our willingness to evolve. The Anunnaki's reintegration is not an invasion, but an invitation. An invitation to remember our true heritage, to unlock the dormant potential within our DNA, to elevate our collective consciousness to a level where we can truly become co-creators of our reality. Each individual decision, each act of awareness, each moment of introspection contributes to the larger tapestry of human evolution. We are not helpless pawns. We are powerful, sovereign beings, and our collective will is the ultimate determinant of our destiny. The priest's final lingering message resonates within me. The Anunnaki offer the mirror, but humanity must choose to look and then to act upon what it sees. This might sound terrifying, overwhelming even, to grasp the sheer magnitude of what is happening, but it's also incredibly empowering. We are not facing an inevitable doom, but standing on the cusp of something monumental, a golden age of enlightenment if we choose it. It requires vigilance, yes, an unwavering commitment to truth, and an open mind willing to shed old paradigms. But it also offers an unprecedented opportunity for growth, for unity, for a future beyond our wildest dreams. This is not a story of fear, but a call to courage, a testament to humanity's inherent resilience and potential for transcendence. We are at a pivotal moment, a cosmic crossroads, and the path we choose will define not just our generation, but all future generations. What do you think? Are you ready for what's coming? Do you believe Egypt holds the key, not just to an ancient past, but to a profound future? Have you felt these subtle shifts, these whispers of change in the world around you? Have you questioned the accepted narratives, felt a yearning for deeper truths? Share your thoughts, your theories, your own experiences, however strange or inexplicable they may seem. Your perspective is vital in this unfolding narrative. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Engage in the conversation. Share your insights. Ask your questions. Because the more we discuss, the more we question, the more we open our minds, the closer we get to understanding the full scope of this monumental shift. And if you want to hear more, if you want to stay updated on this unfolding story, as I continue to decode the messages and witness the changes, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Because this is just the beginning of humanity's true awakening. The truth is out there. It always has been, and it's coming into focus very, very quickly. The veil is thinning, the cosmic clock is ticking, and the stage is set for humanity's grandest act. The Anunnaki's return is not an event to be feared, but a catalyst to be embraced, a mirror reflecting our own boundless potential. The choice now is ours.